Hi, it's Kim Fairminer from Kim Fairminer Astrology, and you might notice I'm a little bit late with the May update. And what I've decided to do is a little video from mid-May right now, because there's some interesting things happening that's going to take us forward into June as well. So mid-May, where we're at right now, I'm recording this on the 12th, brings a change of pace or possibly an about face in several areas of life. Mars is changing sign from Aquarius to Pisces. Saturn retrograde begins in Aquarius, traveling back into Capricorn for a last visit before settling into Aquarius on a longer term basis later in the year. Jupiter also stations retrograde in Capricorn, and Venus retrograde begins in Gemini. Now, Saturn and Jupiter change direction a couple of times a year. So while that's very interesting, it's Venus retrograde that I want to talk about mostly in this video. Venus retrograde only happens once every 18 months. And because she's a personal planet and is interested in relationships, you're going to feel it. It is a real tangible experience. So right now, if you look into the western sky in the evening, just after sunset in that kind of area, you'll see her shining bright and absolutely beautifully up there in the sky. But the reason she's so bright is because she's wandered as far away as she can from the sun. And it's during the retrograde that she starts to come back to the sun. So the significations of Venus, I mentioned relationships. She's got a natural interest in bringing people together and attempting to harmonize them, and she brings that about through the principle of attraction. Like attracts like, opposites attract sometimes too, and this process occurs in all relationships, so all your social connections, whether they're for business or pleasure or with family members or political agreements, diplomatic stuff, all interpersonal relationships and social connections are of interest to Venus. She also harmonizes like visually and orally, like things like music, arts, beauty, how you like wear your clothes, and create harmony in your home environment perhaps. So it's about harmony, cohesion, togetherness. And also, as it connects to what we want, the things that we desire and appeal to us, harmony generally is appealing. Venus also speaks about our values, and it's not necessarily financial values. So it's more about the values that we share in a relationship, and that can create harmony or disharmony, depending if there's an overlap there or whether our personal values match the other person or not. Sometimes they don't, and conflict arises. That's not very Venusian. Venus doesn't like conflict. And so also what we consider beautiful, everybody's got like slightly different tastes, but you can probably see how sometimes a dollar value is ascribed to those values. So things like craftsmanship and rarity or social approval tend to muddy those Venusian waters, and she has taken on sort of financial connotations. And I think in our capitalist mindset, like, if you can't put a dollar value on it, it's not valuable. Not that I necessarily believe that, but I think that's a cultural inheritance that we all carry with us. So due to this retrograde, Venus will be in Gemini for quite a long time. Normally she's just in a sign for roughly about 3 weeks when she's moving at a normal pace. But Venus first went into Gemini on the 4th of April, and she'll be there until the 8th of August. So that's several months rather than a few weeks. So we're getting a real education on what Venus in Gemini likes and what she dislikes. So how does she function in that sign? Like, how does she create and attract harmony in the sign of the twins? So that's what we're all exploring at the moment. So Gemini's a mutable sign, mutable air sign ruled by Mercury. So it's about conversation, negotiation. It's fluid and movable, perhaps fluid isn't the right word. That's a bit more watery. Maybe it's breezy, I think might be a better word. So, the notion of hanging on to something and pinning it down, that's not something Venus is keen on here. She needs movement in Gemini. That's what she's seeking to attract. She wants the ability to move around and change her mind, exchange ideas with people, and find some kind of mental rapport. It's a flirtatious placement as well, so it's playful, it's wordy. If you can slip some double entendres into your conversations, they'll be extra amusing with the people that you interact with at the moment. But you also need to make sure that off-the-cuff remark doesn't sort of tie you into a commitment that you don't really want to commit to, or worse, a promise of some kind. So you don't want to overcommit yourself, or have somebody read into that flirtatious banter more than what's there. So depending on your individual natal chart placements, some people will struggle to understand that light and variable approach of Venus in Gemini. If you've got planets in Gemini, you're probably going to be fine with this. If you've got more of a fixed sign emphasis, say perhaps Scorpio or Taurus, even Leo and Aquarius to a certain extent, so although they are more compatible with that Geminian energy because they're masculine, proactive, kind of externally oriented fire and air signs. So anyway, those kind of more stable and grounded signs will tend to dismiss the movement and flitting and flopping of Venus in Gemini as inconstant and superficial. But to me, that's missing the point. All signs have something to offer, so we don't just write them off. And that's the great thing about Venus in Gemini. She is open to all those possibilities. And through this transit, you can tap into those and you can play with the way that you relate to other people, the way that you present yourself, the way that you approach your artistic practice, perhaps. So you can try before you buy, and before you commit to putting your foot in that glass slipper, you might want to run around a bit, run in it, dance in it, jump before you let yourself be carted off to the castle and the big commitment of running a kingdom. It could be really boring. So Neptune in Pisces is on hand to help build those castles in the sky, and what amazing fantasies they are that we can create in our mind. Like it's rose-colored glasses spring to mind, and we're really going to flesh out these stories of the idealized things, the idealized beauty that we could possibly create. And that Venus square perfects on the 4th of May, the 21st of May. So basically all of May is, caught up in this beautiful creative Venusian fantasy, but very easy to have that bubble popped. And you'll know for sure sort of in July when this transit wraps up, and the final square between Venus and Neptune is on the 27th of July. So Venus retrograde officially starts on the 14th of May, I've got here. It could vary a day or two a day, depending on your time zone where you are. And it goes through to the 26th of June. The degrees that you want to pay attention to in your chart, this starts at 21 degrees Gemini, and Venus will go through backwards through the sign of Gemini to 5 degrees before covering over that area again when she goes direct. So what I'm thinking that will happen with Venus in Gemini during that time, particularly the retrograde period, is we'll do a lot of thinking about how we think about relationships. So thinking about relationships, it's real kind of like tying yourselves in knots in some ways, but perhaps attempting to unravel the knots we've unconsciously created by just, going on business as usual. So you also review how you might connect and communicate with others, and questioning and reviewing the mental connection and the level of rapport that you have with your friends and partners. It may be that you're really blessed in that area of your life and you have people to talk to, and a real meeting of the minds, and you can just share ideas and feed off each other, and it's really great. Or maybe that's something lacking in your life. Whatever you find, don't panic. Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, that kind of thing. Nothing is permanent. It's all like a question and a possibility during this time. So experiment with things. If you're an artist or a creator, choose a new palette, try some new materials, and mix up your look. Don't make drastic or permanent changes. This isn't the time to, get surgery to up or downsize your boobs or get the teardrop tattoo. Write it on with pen. Buy a fancy bra. Like, it's all good. And then, circle back to the more permanent changes that you may wish to commit to after this Venus retrograde period's over. Yeah. So no drastic or permanent changes to your appearance at this time. And be cautious about picking up calls from your ex. Don't send money to online lovers, and don't spontaneously marry anybody. So before I go, I wanted to quickly do a circuit around the zodiac and give you an idea of what this could mean horoscope wise. So if you know your rising sign, listen out for that. If you just know your sun sign, that's also a really good way to approach your horoscope. So we'll start with Aries. I've never done this before. I feel like a weather lady or something, and I've got my little I don't know, air traffic controlling headset on because Hubster's right next to me. He's got a very noisy gamer's keyboard, even though he doesn't game. So Aries, Venus retrograde is happening in your third house, and your third house relates to communication, your learning style, your mindset, and also local travel, neighbours, siblings. So with Venus retrograde there, your creative concepts will be made and remade, pulled apart and put back together again. And just when you think you've finished the thought or you've got the idea, it's time to rediscover and rework it. So that is fun. You'll also probably potentially have some miscommunications with people, but it's Venus, so you will be able to smooth it over. That's the beautiful thing. Nothing is permanent. If you say the wrong thing, you can redo it later on. So Taurus, Venus retrograde will happen in your second house. And Venus is really important for you because it's the ruling planet of your sign. So it's kind of like the boss planet in your chart. And in the second house is about cash flow, your money, your income, also what you value, just resources generally. So with Venus retrograde here, what's valuable to you is under review, and it's like a mental review. It's not sort of emotional, so you might be sort of looking at the facts and totting things up, but I want you to be cautious about entering into any financial partnerships. So if you've just met somebody really wonderful, and then suddenly they hit you up for a loan, or you feel like you need to buy them expensive gifts, that's a bit of a red flag. If you still want to buy it for them in July, all good. Gemini, Venus retrograde is in your first house, and the first house is your window to the world. It's where you see out and where other people see in. It also relates to your body and your physicality. So this is a time to play up with your look, be a bit more chameleon-like and sort of play with things. You in particular, you're the one that don't get the teardrop tattoo, don't book yourself in for plastic surgery. So just try new things, but don't overcommit to, a whole new wardrobe. Cancer will have Venus retrograde in the 12th house. That's the most secretive place of anybody's chart, and it's so secret even you don't know what's going on in there. It's your unconscious or subconscious things that inform your life. It also relates to collective experience, and it's a place of retreat. So you'll be piecing together the maze of your mind and approaching it in a different way. And it's not about kind of going in there with a mission. Just kind of have a casual look back there. Gemini does casual really well, so you can set yourself up and you get the image of mousetrap for this particular transit for Cancer. That 80s game where they have the little net and the little thing in the marble goes down the slide and knocks things over. It's a bit like that back of house Cancer. So like have a play back there, whether you're setting up something or you know, pulling the maze apart. It's up to you. Very interesting. So Leo, your Venus retrograde will be happening in your 11th house of friends, group affiliations, and also your hopes and dreams. The 11th house is the luckiest house. So when Venus is in that house, like Venus is a lucky planet, so it's really, you know, nice and fun. But the thing is, you can't pin anything down while Venus is retrograde. So have some frivolous funs with your friends. Some friends might go AWOL for a while, but that's okay. They will be back. So yeah, just relax, easy breezy all the way. Virgo will have Venus retrograde in the 10th house. The 10th house relates to career, ambition, your reputation, and any recognition that you'll receive. So for Virgo, this has kind of got a flavor of casual career networking. So keep it random, keep it fun, and don't lock yourself into anything. Like people might make promises or suggestions, or you might go, oh, you know, you must go out for so-and-so, or you'll hear like a whisper or a rumor about a future job opportunity. Nothing's kind of tangible and bedded down, so don't make any permanent decisions based on what you might hear in those kind of work settings, but do keep your ear to the ground. Libra, another Venus ruled sign. Taurus was the other one. Venus also rules Libra. Will have Venus retrograde happening in the 9th house. Now, this relates to travel, higher learning, and spirituality. And with the sort of, you know, viral situation in the world, not very many of us have the opportunity to travel. So you'll probably find that you're more dreaming of how you can still expand your mind, perhaps without going too far. So like kind of rethinking any travel plans and looking how you can satisfy that urge to expand your world in new ways. So you might plan a holiday or enroll in a course or learn something fun. Don't probably commit to a 3 years master's degree, but a short course that, you know, keeps the mind ticking over and, you know, perhaps like stirs your creative juices there, you know, something a bit artsy, architecture, you know, something like that. Architecture of ancient Greece, who knows? You could have some real fun there. Scorpio will have Venus retrograde in the 8th house, and the 8th house relates to death, taxes, other people's money, taboos, and intimacy. And I love that Scorpio has Gemini in this sector of the chart. You know, Scorpio's got this reputation for being, you know, dark and serious and broody. And then you're like all really kind of quite flippant and, you know, superficial about death. Oh, yeah, it comes to us all, and you definitely take a light-hearted approach to the topic. So this will be a cool period for you to have a look at your investments and financial plans. Not so much to, you know, make any permanent decisions and sign and lock your money up in a, you know, term deposit for years, but, you know, do your research and, you know, put out the hypotheticals around what you want to do potentially with your retirement planning and things like that. Sagittarius has Venus retrograde in the 7th house. So the 7th house is your relationship sector. Not just romance though, it's partners of all kinds. Anyone you've got a one-on-one relationship with. So it could be a business partner. Yes, it can be your spouse or significant other, but also any exes or enemies. And one thing that retrograde Venus is notorious for is exes popping their little heads up again. So be aware, steel yourself, and, you know, have, let's say, like firm boundaries in mind, but, you know, don't think that you're going to rekindle a long lost love here. If you're in a current partnership now, Venus retrograde in this sector is a great time to do a review. Are you having enough fun? Do you have enough freedom? You're potentially trying to box your partner in and your partner's kicking up about it. So like those are the things that could come up for you in during that Venus retrograde period. For Capricorn, Venus retrograde's happening in the 6th house. The 6th house is about daily duties, routine responsibilities. It also covers illness and pets. It's a little bit of a boring house, but you know, if you don't brush your teeth, they're going to fall out. So that's a daily duty that you have to do for like long-term benefits. And yeah, it can be tedious, but with Venus retrograde in this sector, it's about bringing some joy and curiosity to those daily habits and looking at how they can lead you interesting places, I guess, in that longer term trajectory, why you do what you do. So working relationships in particular will come up for Capricorns and Capricorn rising. So yeah, play around with that daily routine and your best look will be glowing with good health. So yeah, eat well, sleep enough, that kind of thing. Don't burn the candle at both ends. For Aquarius, Venus retrograde is happening in the 5th house, and this is like another fun sector of the chart. So it rules pleasure, recreation, kids, and creativity. So Aquarius and Aquarius rising is being encouraged by Venus retrograde to return to old pleasures. You might want to review your relationship with kids. Don't necessarily have to be your own. It can be like kind of that inner child that we all have within us, that sense of fun and play. Like, are you doing it? You know, can you get more of it in your life? Is there something that you really used to enjoy doing that, you know, you've put by the wayside with more serious topics in your life that, you know, you're called to come back to? Just see, just have a little look and see what happens. So lastly, Pisces. Pisces is having Venus retrograde in the 4th house. This is the sector of the chart at the bottom. It relates to private time, like, you know, the time you spend at home with your family, and it also relates to real estate. So this is a time to be at home with your family and rediscover ways of having fun, perhaps things that you used to do that you can bring back, and also create more harmony in your home life and perhaps patch up family relationships if they've gone a little bit sour. If you're planning on doing a renovation, stick with the planning. Don't knock any walls down just yet. It's sort of in line with that whole, you know, do the planning, explore, experiment, fill up your Pinterest board, but just hold off on the sledgehammer because that's not easy to undo. And you want to give yourself that freedom to undo things during Venus retrograde. So if that hasn't got your mind working enough, what this upcoming few weeks will, you know, be highlighting for you, you can think back to June 2012. There was a very special Venus retrograde happened then when Venus actually crossed the face of the sun. I remember sneaking out from work and going to a local park and sitting with an ibis. I couldn't see the little black dot of Venus retrograde across the sun, but that was only, you know, the sun's so big and bright and Venus was like a tiny blip only visible through a telescope. But what happened during June 2012 is likely to give you some really amazing thematic clues about what's going to reappear for you in coming weeks. And if you'd like to dive deeper, I am open to client consultations and we can certainly dive into a supported exploration of these matters in your chart. Thank you very much. I hope you have an amazing Venus retrograde and uncover, you know, the other side of, you know, relationships, beauty, and yeah, all the wonderful things that Venus has on offer. Bye.